Hello friends, welcome to my channel. In today's session we are going to perform CRUD operations in ASP.NET Core, Razor Pages. This is the final output of this session. Here we have added one nav item to create the books and to see the books available in the database. Click on this books. Here we can see all the items are loaded from the database and displayed here. If you want to create any new book, you can click on this button to create a new book. Let me click on the create new book button. Here we can provide the title, description and author details to submit the data. Without providing any details, I am trying to save this data. Let me submit. So these validations are implemented here. If I add book title here, let me add. So now this error has been removed. So here we have implemented client side and server side validations, and let me add the book description. So this validation error message has been removed when we enter the description. So our client side validations are working perfectly, and let me choose author also. Now we filled all three columns. Let me submit the data. The data has been saved into the database, and here we are using Suite Alert to display the messages. Let me click on OK. So now the newly added book has been showed in the book list. Let me edit this data. Click on edit. Here I can change here. Let me update. Let me update this data. The book details are updated and the updated data has been binded to the book list. Also here we can delete the data. Let me click on this delete. Here we have disabled all the controls here. Since user is trying to delete this data, we no need to enable these text box controls. That's why we enable the read only property here, so that it will not allow user to modify the content. If user want to go back to the list, you can click on this back to list button, where it will be redirected to book list. Let me go back to the delete again. This time I'm going to delete the data. The data has been deleted and updated the book list here. Also here we have added Bootstrap icons here in the UI. You can see plus and the edit, delete. So we added Bootstrap icons here. For this session I'm going to use Visual Studio 2022. Let me create a new project here. Click on create a new project. Here I'm going to search for Razor Pages. Select the ASP.NET Core web app with Razor Pages. Click on next. Here I'm going to give my project name. This is my project name. I'm going to store this project inside this folder. Let me click on next. Here I'm going to use .NET Framework 9, which is latest version. I selected .NET 9. Click on create. Our project has been created. Here we are going to use Entity Framework code first approach to perform CRUD operations. For that I need to install few packages. Let me right click on the solution, go to the manage NuGet packages. Here package source I'll select as all. Let me go to the browse. Here I'm going to search for Entity Framework Core. Let me install Entity Framework Core here. Select the latest stable version, click on install, accept. It's installed. Then go to the SQL Server. We are going to use Microsoft SQL Server. We need to install Microsoft.entityframeworkcore.sql Server. Also we are going to use the code first approach. For that we need tools also. select the tools and install, accept the license terms. All the required packages has been installed. Go to the Solution Explorer. Here I am going to create a folder to store all my DB entities. Let me add my books entity. I am going to create one class for books model. Here I am going to define properties. This will be ID and primary key. I'll create another property for book title. So I'm going to create these properties here. Also I'm going to make this book title as mandatory, so add with required data annotation. Description is not mandatory. Let me add author also mandatory. Also while displaying, I don't want to display this title as book title. Let me change the display column name for this property. Instead of book title, I can make it as book space title. That will be more meaningful while displaying in the UI. Let me add this as book description. Author, let it be, this is fine. Then I'm going to create another folder to store all my data access related objects. Let me create class here. I'll name it as my app DB context. This DB context is going to communicate between our application and the database server. This will be inherited from DB context. Select DB context, click on DB context. And generate constructor with options. Here we have to add another property, DB set, say books table. This I'll give name as books. The name we have provided here, this will be created as a table in our SQL server, and all the columns will be referred from this books model. So for this entity framework core tools we will use for all this process. If you go to the Solution Explorer, here you can see our packages, entity framework core tools. This is the one responsible to move all our DB and models to the SQL server. Here we can see the documentation. Go to this help doc. Here we have all the commands which we need to use to process the migration. For that, add migration, where this will initialize the connection, and the update database, where we can push all our DB and DB entities like models to the database. So this will create the database and tables. Okay. To remove the migration, here we have the command called remove migration. So you can refer the documentation which is available inside your packages, and expand the tools under tools documents. So you can refer this one. Let me go to the app settings.json. Here we need to add the connection string to communicate with the DB. For that, let me create connection strings. Here we have to provide the name for connection string. Let me give it as default connection. We have to provide server, then database name. Here if you are using Windows authentication for your SQL server, then you need to use integrated security as true. If you are using server authentication, then you don't need to use this. You can provide username, password of your SQL server. Then I need to encrypt my connection string. For that I'm going to use encrypt as true. Then I'm going to use trust server certificate as true. Whenever you are using HTTPS for your deployment, you need to add this trust certificate. Whenever you are using HTTPS to deploy your application, you need to use trust server certificate as true. Okay, so our connection string has been added. Now we need to register this default connection inside our program.cs for the dependency. Let me go here. Here we can add builder.services.add a DB context. Here we have to provide the DB context name, that is my app DB context. Inside this we have to pass options. I'm going to use SQL Server. Here we need to provide the connection string. For that, here I can use builder.configuration.get connection string to read the connection string from my app settings.json. To read the connection string from my app settings.json, this is the connection string name which I have to provide here. Now we are ready to communicate with our DB server. If you see in our solution explorer, we don't have any migrations folder here. Once we have completed our migrations, we can see here folder called migrations. All the migrations will be stored in that folder. Even app settings.json, we have to give server name and database name. For that, let me go to my DB server. This is my server name. Let me copy from here and I can paste it to my server. And this is my SQL instance. I'm going to use local server. Database name, I'm going to create a new DB here. Let me make it as demo. This is the database I'm going to create now by using Entity Framework Code tools. If you see, we don't have any DB called demo. Let me go to the package manager console now. Here I'm going to write command add migration initial. This is the migration name. So whenever you are doing any migration, you need to provide the migration name. Enter here. It's build file. Let me go back and build the solution. Okay, so it's a display name. It's a display name. This is the error it's coming. Let me change it. Go to the package manager console again. Let me run the add migration initial. This time we don't have any errors. Now if you see inside our solution explorer, the migrations folder has been created and the version details and all everything available. But if you see in our SQL DB server, this DB has been not yet created. For that we need to add one more command, update database. This is responsible to push this migration to our SQL server. Let me enter here. This time our migration has been done. Let me go to my DB server, refresh here, expand the databases. Demo database has been created. If you expand this, there is a table called books, which is added in our model here. Also, there is a table called migration history. Let me open this table and see what are all the records available here. So there is a version name which is provided as initial, and the data has been, and this has been added for tracking purpose. Now we have completed all our project setup. Now we can go ahead and we can create our Razor pages. Let me go to the pages here, add folder, it's a book. Inside this, first I want to display list of books available in the database. Let me create a Razor page. It's a empty Razor page. Add, I can make it as index. Let me add. Here we can see two files. One is index.cshtml and index.cshtml.cs file. In this index.cshtml we can design all our view, and the cshtml.cs, so we can write all our business logics to display the data. Now let me get into the index.cshtml.cs page. First we will complete our business logic, then we will create the view. To read the data from the database, we need app.db context. For that I am going to initialize my db context here, private read only. It's my app.db context. I'll make it as context. Select this, go to the quick actions, generate constructor for this. Now we can communicate with our DB. When the index page is called at the first time, the get method will be called. Here we are going to read our books. Let me go here. Before this, let me declare my books property. Here I'll get the list of books. For that I'll make it as list of books here. And I'll make it this as books. Here let me go and read the books from DB. Now here I can read list of books. I'll make this method as asynchronous. Let me change it to async. Here task I'll add, and also this method name I can change, get async method. So now we will get the list of books from this. And also here we need to use await, since we are using as asynchronous method. Let me go to the solution explorer. Here we will create one av item, pages, shared, layout. Let me go to this. Let me copy here. I'll add one more nav item. This I'll make it as books, and it will be called default from book folder. The index page will be called. Let me enable debug point here, and we will try to read the data from our DB. Let me run in debug mode. Let me click on books. It's hitting our breakpoint. Let me go here. Here we don't have books. Go back and we will design the UI here. Go to the index. Let me add title here. For that we will use view data. Here I can pass key as title. Let me give the name as book list. First, to create a book, I'll provide the one button. Let me make it as one anchor tag here. This goes to the create page. I can give it as create. So we need to create this page. We can give class here. This I'll give margin bottom 2 and I'll give the title as create new book. This is my button. Then I'm going to create one div here. I'll give the Bootstrap class, card and shadow. I'm going to display my book list on top of a card. Then I'm going to use class here, card header. Inside this I'll display my title. So instead of typing the header here, so I'm going to reuse this view data as same book list. Then I can go for another div where I can display the card body here. Inside the card body I'm going to create one table. Let me create Bootstrap styles for this table. Here I can use table row and table header. I'm going to use helper class, HTML helper class here. Display name 4. I can use model to display the labels also. Let me call my model here. Model dot books id books. Actually here we can get the id here. I want to display only the header here. Let me duplicate this. Okay, then book title, book description and author. So we have done the header part. Now not, let me validate it if model is not null. So inside model we have the books table, not null, and if model dot books dot any. So if we have any records, then we need to display here, else I can add default text here. Let me write first this part. Here we will get the list of books. For that I can use for each loop here. This data comes from model dot books. Instead of book we can make it as it's a book. Here I'm going to create td here I can use again HTML helper class display name. Instead of display name, display for. Here we need display name, here we need display for. We can use model ID, say book.id. Before this I need to add table row. Then book title, the next TD we need to add one more table header for I want to display the action buttons here. Let me go back here and I can add those buttons also. I'll add one anchor tag, ASP page, where it should go to the edit page, and route we have to provide here. I can provide book.id here, class, say edit. Let me duplicate this. In this case it has to go to delete. Here also we have to pass the ID. Let me delete this. So these methods we need to create, and these pages also we have not yet created. For now we are working with index page, and we are going to create new pages for create, edit and delete. If we don't have any data, if this model contains null, or if it doesn't have any data, then we need to make a row here. I'll span 5 because here we have 5 columns, 4 plus 1. I'm making as a single column. Here I'll display the custom message where we don't have books, no books are available at the moment. So this is the text I'm going to display when there are no products. This is the custom message we are going to display to the user when we don't have any data in the DB. Let me run this project. Click on books. Here there is a button to create a new book, and this is the card where it is showing the header, book list, and the columns are showing here. Currently we don't have any products, that's why we are showing this custom message. Let me align few things here. After this button we need some space here. Let me go back. Okay, instead of margin bottom 2, I'll make it as 3. Let me reload. Okay, here also we need to make this as H3 so that it will display clear. This is clear now. but for this also margin top I'll add 2. Let me see now. Yeah, now it's clear. I think this is not required now. Okay, so for now we have completed this part where it's displaying the products. Let me add one product from the backend and let us see how it will display. Go to the backend, open the books table. Currently we don't have any records in this table. Let me add one record. Book title Java. We have added one record from the backend. Let us go to our application, reload the page. Here we can see the data is loaded correctly. Also we need to change few things here. This delete, I need to make a change here. This I'll make it as danger. Okay, we are going to discuss about how to create a new book. For that, let me go to my project, go to the solution explorer. Inside the book we have to create a new page, that is treasure page. Right click, add treasure page. Here I am going to select empty treasure page. Click on add. I'll make it as create, add. Now if you go to solution explorer, we can see two files. One is CS.html, where we are going to use for our design purpose. Our UI will be mentioned in the HTML file, and there will be one class file where we can write our business logics. Let me implement business logics first. Here we have to initialize the DB context before we start our implementation. For that, I'll make it private read only. I need to initialize my app.db context. This is my app.db context. I'll make it as context. Click on context, go to the quick actions, generate constructor. Now we can communicate with our database by using app.db context. Now to create any book, we need our HTML page with all the columns. For that, I am going to return iAction result here, and here I'll return the empty page. Here we will not be having any data. We are going to return empty page so that user can provide the input and they can submit the book details. Once this is done, we can go for a model declaration here to bind the properties. This is going to be books model and it's available in books. Here I'll set the default for this. This property is going to be bind property. We are going to bind the data from our HTML view. This will hold our all the columns, and we are going to use this property to save the data into our database. Let me create post action method here. I am going to make this async method. This is my post async method to save the book. Before submitting any data, we have to validate our model state. If model state is valid, we can submit the data. If it's not valid, we need to return to the page. If it's not valid, we are going to return the page. Else, we are going to save the data to the database. Now we will get the data in the form of books. These books we need to assign to the DB context. Let me call our data context. So we are going to assign these books to our data context. Now once it is added, we have to save the data. When we are using entity framework, always once it is assigned, we need to save the changes. Here we are going to use the async. So I need to use this. Also we have to use await keyword here. Now we will get the data will be saved into our books table. Once data is saved into the database, I am going to return this to our index page. Let me call redirect to page. Here we have to provide our page name. Let me make it as its index. Now we have implemented both get and post action methods. Now we have to go to our CS HTML file and we need to create a design. First we have to provide the title. I'll store this into view data. I'll make it as title. Here I'm going to create one div where I'll give Bootstrap classes. For this I'm going to create a CRUD. I'll make this as shadow. So already we have explained how to create this CRUD in Razor pages. Let me add header for this. Here I am going to display the title. Let me use the same title here. I'll use h3 tag here. Inside this I am going to use title. Next to this we are going to call our body. I'll use class. I'm taking 6 columns here. I don't want to display 12 columns. And inside this we are going to create a form. Method should be post. Whenever we are posting the data, we have to use the method as post. So let me make it as form. Here I'll use the label. Here we will get the books dot book title. Here I'll use the control. use the label for this. Then we need the input control here to add the book title. Also we need to validate the data. For that I need to use span So these three columns we are going to reuse. Let me copy this div. We need book description and the author. Let me change quickly these columns. Then author, this book description is not a mandatory. Let me remove this validation for this. If any column is mandatory, then we can add the validation messages. Here if you see in the model, let me go to the model, books, the description is not a mandatory. Author, that's why we have enabled validation for book title and author alone. So finally we need to add the button. Let me go here. These are all the Bootstrap classes I'm adding. So based on your requirement you can add. Margin top 2. Inside this I'm going to create a button. Type should be submit, and whenever and class btn primary. I'll close this here and I can give the text as submit. This is the button text. Here let me create one anchor tag. I'll create back to list hyperlink here. I'll give the class and here let me make it as back to list. Save. Let me run my page. Also in the create page let me enable the debug here. We are running the application in debug mode. Click on books. This is not required now. It's index page. Continue. Now let me click on create new book. So it's redirected to our create page. So the design is showing as we expected. Also we have the buttons here, submit and back to list. Without entering any data, I am trying to submit here. Let me click on submit. It's hitting to our post action method. Let me see the bind property, whether we have all the properties. Author null, book description null, title null, ID since we have not assigned anything. so it says 0. So now let me continue in debug mode. Model state is not a valid. Since we have not provided any data for that, its model state is not valid. If you see here, we are getting the model state false. Here model state is not valid. That's why once I continue, it will redirect to the page and it will show the messages. This is server side validation. Also we need to implement the client side validation also. Let me enter my book title. I'll make it as ASP.NET and author I'll enter. Whenever we enter these details, this error has to remove. This validation error need to be removed. For that we need to implement the client side validation. First let us submit this data. We'll see whether this data is saving into our database or not. Let me click on submit. This time let me go to the books bind property. Here we are getting the required details. Let me continue in debug mode. This time model state is valid true. It goes to the DB context and it will try to save. Once it is saved, it will redirect to index page. Let me continue. We can see the newly added book has been displayed in the index page. Now we need to enable the client side validation also. Before that, let us go to the database and we'll see whether the data has been saved into our DB or not. Databases. Here we use the demo database. Let me expand these tables. This is our books table. Let me open this table. Select top 1000 rows. Here we can see our newly added book has been saved to the database. Now let me minimize this. I'll go to the Visual Studio. Now we have to implement the client side validations also. Let me go to this page. Go to the Solution Explorer. Go to the shade. This jQuery validation related JS has been added to this partial page. From here only we are going to implement our client side validation. To implement the client side validation, we will go to our CS HTML page. Here we are going to add one section. If you know about the .NET Core MVC application, how to implement the client side validation, it will be easy for you. The same way we are going to do it in the Razor pages also. Here I am going to call that partial page to implement the client side validation. Let me write HTML dot render partial view. I am going to call that partial view. So here we are going to call that page. Let me go back to the Solution Explorer. Let me copy this file name. I need this file name. This CS/HTML is not required. That's it. Now our client side validation should work. Let us reload our page. Let me click on books. So our debug point still it's enabled. When we submit without entering any values, it should not hit here. Let me go to the new book. Now I have not entered any data. Let me click on submit. So without going into the our server side the validations are working as we expected. If I type any text here, so this automatically this validation messages will be removed. See, so likewise we can implement the client side validation. Let me submit this time. It's hitting now. Let me continue. The data has been stored and it will be redirected to our index page. Let me go to the backend, click on execute. The recently created book has been saved into our database. So now we have implemented the create new book part successfully. In this session we are going to discuss how to edit this book and how we can modify the data. For that we are going to open the solution explorer. Inside this books we are going to create a new page for edit. Click on razor page, select the empty razor page, add. Here I am going to create new page called edit. First we will implement the business logics. Go to the edit page. To communicate with DB we need app-DB context. First we will initialize that. Select the context, go to the quick actions, generate constructor. Now here we have to add the bind property. Here I am going to define my books model. I will name it as books. By default I will make it as default values. Here we are going to read the data based on the ID. Here whenever user clicks on the edit, here we will get the ID of that record. So based on the ID we are going to read the data. Here I will define this input parameter and it's optional ID, and here I am going to check if ID is null, then I will return the page to index again. I am going to redirect to the index page here. This I am going to change as async. If ID is not null, then we have to read the data from the database. Here we will get the book details. I have to get the data from context dot books. First or default. So here I need to pass the book details. B dot ID equals to ID input parameter, which we are going to receive from our index view. Once we get the book, we need to verify whether it contains data or not. Either it can return one record of book or we may get the null. So if it is null, again we need to redirect to the index page. If books are not null, then we need to assign this data to bind property, which is declared here. This is our bind property. I am going to assign this book. Finally, we have to return the page. Based on the ID, we are going to read the data and we are going to return to this page. Next, we need to create another action method to update the data. I will make this as async, and here I am going to post the data. Before saving the data, we need to check whether model state is valid or not. If it's not valid, we are going to redirect to the same page. You can use return page here. If its model state is valid, then we have to update the data. For that, I will use context dot update. I can use here. We have to pass the book. After updating, we have to save the changes. Since it's a async method, we need to use the save changes async. We have to use a await keyword also. After successful update, again we need to return to the page. I'll redirect to page here. I can make it index here. Now go to the edit.cs HTML page. Here we need to define our UI part. First, I'll add title here. Then I'll use one div. I'm going to use the same Bootstrap classes here for edit also. Let me copy from the create, and I'm going to reuse this. Here we are going to copy the same view bag title. Here we are going to display inside the h3 tag, and we are creating card. Inside this we are going to show title. Also here we are showing the book description and then author. To update any data, we need the primary key value. For that, I'll keep here the input type is hidden ASP4. Here I'm going to use books.id. I need to pass the ID also to modify the data. So others are remain same. Also, when we submit, it has to update the data. I will make it as update. and if user wants to go back to the index page, they can click on this back to list. Let me go to the CS page and I'll enable the debug points here. Also for post, let me run the application in debug mode. So there are some errors. Here let me use await here also. Now run the application in debug mode. Here we are going to click on edit button. We can notice here we are getting ID of each book. Let me click on this edit. It's coming to the get action method. Here ID is not null. Here we can see the book details. Let me continue. It's returning to the page. This, instead of view bag, I am going to change it as view data. For view bag we cannot assign the key. Let me change it to the title. I'll run the application again. I'll hot reload this page. Click on edit. Let me continue. I'm getting the book details. Okay, so the data are binding into our text box controllers. Just I'll change a few things here. Let me click on update. Again it is hitting to post action method. So model state is valid. Now it will try to update that book. The book details has been updated with latest details. Let me go to the DB and we can check the data there. So earlier we had this data, the ID 2. Let me execute. The latest details has been updated to the database. Like this we can update the data in Razor pages. Let me click on delete. Whenever user clicks on this delete button, it has to delete the book from database. For that we can go for the two approaches. One, the first approach will be whenever user clicks on the delete, like this edit page, so we can display the book details, and these text box controls can be disabled. Whenever user clicks on delete, we can delete the entry from the database and we can redirect to the index page. The second method, we can go with the JavaScript approach. Whenever user clicks on delete button, we will show the confirmation box like either this book need to delete or not. Once user clicks on OK, that book will be deleted and this list will be updated dynamically. So we can go with the second approach. I don't want to implement new page for this. Whenever user clicks on this delete button, I will show the JavaScript alert message. Once user clicks on OK, we are going to delete that book from the database. Let me close this. Go to the Solution Explorer. Here we have the different pages. This is the index page where we are showing the book list, and this is the create page where we can create new book, and the edit page where we can update the existing book details. Let me go to the index CS HTML page. Here we are going to implement the delete functionality. Here I am going to post the data to the form. That's why I am creating a form here, and method will be post. So here I need to give the page handler. So I can pause, delete. Here we have to provide the primary key ID for the deletion. I'll give as ID. Here we will get from book dot ID. So this is the post method we are doing. Let me close this after this deletion tag. Whenever user submits, we need to show the JavaScript alert message. For that I will use on submit. Here I am going to pause the message. This is the message which I am going to show to the end user to confirmation. Once user is confirmed, this will be deleted. This can be removed. I can make this as a button now. I can give class for this. This is the button text. Now I need to implement this post action method. Whenever user is clicks on this delete, this JavaScript alert will be displayed, and once user is clicks on OK, this record need to delete. For that I will go to the CS page where we need to write the functionality to delete the record. Here I will write the method to delete the data. I am making as asynchronous method here. On post I want to delete this. So this is a asynchronous method. Here we need to pass the ID to delete the data. I need ID here, it's a integer. Let me pass ID. Now here based on this ID, I can get the book details. First I need to check whether this ID is valid or not. For that I am going to use context.books. So we can find by ID. It's a async method. I am passing the ID here. So based on this ID, now I will get the book list. Now based on this ID, I will get the book. If this book is null, I am going to return as not found. So if book is null, then there is no record with that ID. It's a invalid book ID. If it's available, then I am going to remove that book from the database. I will use the context here, it is a database context. I will try to remove the book. Here I need to save the database context. Finally, I am going to return this page to index view again. Finally, I am going to return this page. It will redirect to the index page again. Let me build this solution. There is no error. Let me run this application. So there is a alignment issue. Let me go to the index view here. Here we need to adjust this button alignment. Let me go here. I will add the style display. I will make it as inline. Let me save. So it's showing correctly. Here we can see two records available in the database as well. We are showing these two entries from the UI. Let me try to delete this entry. Click on delete. We are showing the confirmation message here. Let me cancel. This record will not be deleted. Let me try again. This time I am clicking on OK instead of cancel. Click on OK. This data has been deleted from the database. Let me see here. Data has been deleted. Let me try with this entry again. Click on OK. Data has been deleted. Currently, we don't have any books in the database. Likewise, we can implement the delete functionality in Razor pages. That's it for today. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.